Hello, everybody. Today we're going to be taking a look at the new government under the Constitution and how it was set up and aligned. This is our Unit 4, Section 2 lecture. And I'm Ms. Baldoff, and let's get started. So one of the biggest debates in setting up our new government was the power struggle between the state and federal level government. So in creating the Constitution, the Founding Fathers decided that we would divide up the power between the federal and state government, and that concept is known as federalism. Now, in this, they had the argument of, well, if you divide the power, you have to have a power who is more powerful than the other, and so therefore they decided that federal power will always triumph and supersede state power. So the powers that the federal government has include the power to create an army, which is our defense, the power to regulate interstate trade between the states, also to govern foreign affairs, such as treaties with other countries, and lending money and making money, and the power to tax at the federal level. So state governments cannot coin their own money, all right, and they don't regulate their own money. That is an example for the federal government. However, state powers, which we call reserved powers, that are only given to the states, include education, such as state public schools. Each state is required to manage and maintain their own public school system. Marriage is also another state regulation, and each state can decide. Hence why you have certain states who have gay marriage and certain states who don't ban gay marriage, and that's because it is a reserved power. And then as far as trade is concerned, each state is responsible for managing and regulating its own trade as long as it is within the state borders, which we call interstate trade. Now, the way the Constitution is set up, the opening document of the Constitution is called the preamble, and it is basically the opening paragraph, and it does not lay out the full rules for our government. However, it does outline the goals of the purpose of our government in the United States. And it also outlines the goals that are presented in the 7 articles to the Constitution. Articles 1 through 3 that are established, they establish our 3 branches of government, which we derived from the Iroquois nations and so forth. Article 1 looks at the legislative branch, and it details out how the powers that the legislative branch has, the breakdown of the House and the Senate, and the criteria that go into making the legislative branch come together. And also the process in making laws. Article 2 breaks down the executive branch, such as the president and all other offices that execute the laws and carries them out. It also details the succession of the president and so forth. And then Article 3 looks at the judicial branch and looks at the settling of disputes on laws. So it interprets our law made by the legislative branch, agreed on by the executive, carried out, and the judicial reviews it to make sure that it is still constitutional. So that is a recap and an overview of Articles 1 through 3. Now, the principles that were used to design our government included checks and balances. We wanted to avoid a king, a queen, a monarchy, and authoritative governments. So we wanted to make sure that each branch had equal opportunity and was not any more powerful than the other. So, for example, the president can veto a law that's made by Congress. Congress can override that veto. Then you have the principle of separation of powers, so that not one branch has complete control. So, for example, If we didn't have separation of powers, you might have it where the president makes the law, approves the law, and interprets the law. And in that case, you would have a dictatorship. But with separation of power, Congress makes the law, the president approves and executes the law, and then the judicial branch interprets it. Again, we want to limit the authority of the government because we do not like a king. The executive branch, more specifically in Article 2, we address how we chose our president. Our early founders were not all equally educated, and so the electoral college that they set up would be set up so that each state's electors equaled the number of senators plus the number of representatives in the House for each state. The reason they did this because they didn't believe that the general public was educated enough to make a sound decision to choose our country leader. There's a lot of debate over whether the Electoral College should still be around, and if, with the day and age with the internet and television, if the American people have access to more information to make a sound decision. What do you think? Should the Electoral College still be around? Then we have Article 5. The creators of the Constitution knew that it was not perfect. They didn't intend for it to be perfect. And to be honest, they didn't think the thing would last. So they did provide a way in Article 5 for us to amend the Constitution, and we do that through amendments. They wanted to provide a way that we could change the Constitution, and we do that such as, for example, Amendment 18 outlawed the use of alcohol in the United States. However, Amendment 21 changed the Constitution again to say that alcohol is now allowed and legal to buy, purchase, and sell. Once the Constitution itself was written, and the men were ready to go home in September of 1787, George Washington thought that the Constitution actually wouldn't last more than 20 years. He said this as he left the convention. In actuality, we are still using it today, over 220 years later, which is pretty astounding. Now we need to take the Constitution to the drawing board, give it to the citizens, and let's see how they react. Let's give it to the states. And so now 9 of 13 states need to approve the Constitution before we can start using it. A couple of other pieces. Article 6 details how we pay off our debts. It also establishes that the federal government is triumphant over the state, and that it also details the loyalty oath that our government officials take when coming into office. Article 7 gave the requirements needed for the Constitution to be put into effect, and again, Article 7 detailed that 9 of 13 states were needed to ratify the Constitution. George Washington will officially be sworn in 1789 as President of the United States of America, the very first president to come into office.